August the 20th, 1966. A young Brazilian, Jorge da Costa Alves, is flying a kite on a hill known as the Morro de Vintém in Niterói, a suburb of Rio de Janeiro. Upon losing his kite, he stumbles his way to the summit when he stumbles across something far more sinister. The corpses of two middle-aged men lying side by side on their backs, dressed in formal suits and waterproof coats, with two strange lead eye masks lying either side of their remains. This discovery would end up spiralling into one of the most bizarre UFO stories ever recorded, entangling Brazil into a dark mystery that would haunt the entire continent and mystify the world as a whole. This is the mystery of the men in lead masks. Mysteries aren't always hidden in the skies or hills over Brazil. Sometimes they're buried in the data we leave behind online. Every time you use the web, pieces of your personal information are sent across networks you can't always see. Where that information ends up and who has access to it is often a mystery in itself, which is why it's vital to have something in place to protect you. That's why I'm proud to say that today's video partner is NordVPN. NordVPN encrypts your connection, keeping your internet data private and protected from the most common cyber threats, like phishing attacks, data leaks, and unsecured Wi-Fi networks. With just one click, your online activity is shielded, so no one can trace what you're doing, all whilst protecting you from various online threats. When researching information for the channel, I use NordVPN to help safely access archives, reports, and articles hosted in many different regions across the globe. Their Threat Protection Pro feature allows me to do this securely, using advanced browsing protection to ensure malicious websites that may contain malware or phishing content are blocked, whilst highlighting which links are safe for me to visit. It also comes with a plethora of other security features that protect me from online threats daily, such as dark web monitoring to see which of my account passwords have been compromised by data breaches, and a malware scanner to remove any files that could be potentially harmful. If you want to obtain the same level of protection that I have, you can get an exclusive deal if you purchase today at nordvpn.com/spectator. That's nordvpn.com/spectator. Every purchase of a 2-year plan through this link includes an additional 4 bonus months on top, which you can only get through the link in the description. And remember, NordVPN comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, meaning you can try it completely risk-free. Protect your data, secure your connection, and keep your online activity a mystery to everyone but yourself. Once again, that's nordvpn.com/spectator. Heavy rain prevented authorities from reaching the bodies until the next day, but when police finally reached the summit, the ground was soaked and silent. The corpses belonged to Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, both TV technicians in their mid-30s from Campos dos Goitacazes, a town approximately 283 kilometers to the northeast of where they were found. According to locals, both were considered respectful citizens with no signs of a criminal past. Scattered around the bodies of the two men were several miscellaneous items: an empty bottle of water, 2 wet towels, a crushed piece of aluminized paper, but most interestingly, a small notebook containing pages of unusual inscriptions. Some pages contained ordinary electrical notes, such as formulas and lists of components, yet others were much stranger. Odd symbols, scattered numbers, and lines resembling encrypted messages. One of the handwritten notes supposedly read, 1 capsule on Sunday after lunch, 1 capsule on Wednesday before bed. Another broadly translates to 16:30, be at the determined location. 18:30, ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals, await signal mask. Police would later claim that they believed the notes were written by someone else due to the handwriting, with the vocabulary unusual from their typical speech. Lastly, both men had money found in their jacket pockets, with Miguel carrying 157,000 cruzeros, equivalent to $71 at the time, whilst Manuel had 4,000 cruzeros, or just under $2. Investigators quickly noticed that both bodies showed no signs of any injury, trauma, or struggle, with both seemingly peacefully deceased side by side in the muddy terrain. But there was one detail that stood out. Their skin carried a strange pink tint, suggesting that both had suffered a similar kind of burn. Whilst it was initially unclear how they had died, the notes surrounding the ingestion of a capsule led police to believe that they had initially died from a poisonous substance that they had taken voluntarily, so awaited toxicology reports from the coroner in hopes of concluding the cause. However, with the coroner supposedly unable to perform any autopsies until weeks later due to a busy period, the internal organs of the 2 victims were deemed too badly decomposed for any reliable testing. Eventual examinations found no traces of any poison, and much like the initial findings on the hill, no signs of injury or external force were deemed responsible for their deaths. It was concluded that both Miguel and Manuel died sometime between Tuesday the 16th and Saturday the 20th of August, with the most reasonable cause of death being death by natural causes, such as a sudden cardiac arrest. Police were left dumbfounded. How can 2 middle-aged men, with no signs of any underlying health conditions, die suddenly without any possible cause other than a sudden heart attack? What were the capsules they ingested prior to their demise? Why were they so far from home atop a hill in the Brazilian wilderness? And what was the meaning behind the strange lead masks and cryptic handwritten notes? Detectives took the 4-hour drive back to their hometown in search of answers, and spoke with their family and friends to pursue the truth. Yet after a thorough search of each victim's apartments, police would learn that these 2 men were no ordinary TV technicians, and were involved in something far more mysterious, sinister, and otherworldly. Miguel and Manuel were members of an occult society known as scientific spiritists, a movement which blends religion, philosophy, and science to determine a framework for understanding life and death, as well as the paranormal and extraterrestrial. Spiritism was coined in 1857 by French educator and writer Allan Kardec, a man fascinated by seances and the idea of speaking with the dead. Inspired by the spiritualist movement at the time, Kardec began his own experiments into mediumship, eventually shaping his own belief system, which blended science, philosophy, and faith. Kardec's doctrine is based on 5 books, known together as the Spiritist Codification, describing Spiritism as a science which deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits, as well as their relationship with the corporeal world. The movement soon spread across the globe, but nowhere did it take root more deeply than in Brazil, with the country today having more than 3 million devoted followers. Both Miguel and Manuel were said to be avid followers of scientific spiritism, with police finding books in both of their homes regarding the movement. Passages referring to spirits, intense luminosity, and masks were also found underlined in the publications. Similar masks to those they were wearing on the Morro do Ventame were found in Miguel's workshop, alongside remnants of the lead sheets that had been used to craft them. After speaking with family members, it became evident that the men had supposedly been working on a secret mission to communicate with other planets, and were conducting a number of experiments in the months leading up to their death. Elcio Carrera da Silva, who was a member of the same group as Miguel and Manuel, was present during these experiments. The first took place in Manuel's back garden on the 13th of June, where a strange contraption of pipes and wires was built to make contact with Mars. He claims he witnessed the device explode, causing a huge blast which sent shockwaves through the area. The second experiment was on a beach in Atafona, which once again caused an explosion so powerful that it shook buildings as far as 15 kilometers away, causing a blinding flash. This was all beginning to sound a little too far-fetched for detectives, who were beginning to question the validity of Elcio's claims. Yet upon questioning local fishermen at the beach, who claimed to also be spectators to the event, the story began to take an even wilder turn. Not only did they corroborate Elcio's story, but they claimed that, after the explosion following the experiment, a flying saucer fell from the sky and crashed into the ocean. Police immediately laughed off the idea that a homemade device could not only reach extraterrestrials, but somehow bring an alien spacecraft crashing into the sea. Yet the fact remained that the pair were actively involved in highly unusual activities, only adding more curiosity as to what their intentions may have been on the Morro de Vintém that day. A few days before his death, Manuel supposedly told family members that he was soon going to attend a final test, which would ultimately determine whether or not he was a true believer. Judging by the supposed obsession with scientific spiritism and the previous experiments before, police assumed that this must have been in reference to his venture with Miguel atop the hill at Niterói. After concluding their initial investigation, police were able to trace their movements and construct a timeline of events. On Wednesday the 17th of August at around 9 AM, Miguel and Manuel boarded a bus in Campos dos Goitacazes, claiming that they were taking a 9-hour journey to Sao Paulo to buy a car and equipment for an upcoming job. It's reported that they took 3 million cruzeiros between them, roughly $1,300 at the time, to cover the cost of the trip. The two men would eventually reach Niterói at approximately 2 PM during a rainstorm, and stopped to buy 2 raincoats at a cost of 9,400 cruzeiros. A waitress at a bar in Marques de Parana Avenue claimed the pair came in and bought a single bottle of water, and were seemingly very nervous, with Miguel frequently checking the time on his watch. At around 3:15 PM, after ferrying across Guanabara Bay, a civilian guard named Rolino de Matos reportedly saw the pair getting out of a jeep at the foot of the hill, with 2 other people who he could not clearly observe. They would last be observed at around 5 PM when they would make their way up the Morro de Vintém, before being found 3 days later by Jorge da Costa Alves, looking for his lost kite. As with many such stories, the idea that these 2 men had any involvement with the extraterrestrial was initially ridiculed and dismissed. Yet remarkably, other witnesses claimed to have seen a UFO on the same day that the 2 men went missing. Gracinda Barbosa Coutinho de Souza told investigators that on the evening of the 17th of August, her and her 3 children were driving nearby when they saw a giant oval object hovering over the hill. She stopped the car and observed what she described as a bright orange craft that was sending out rays in all directions. A large number of other witnesses had also independently called authorities in later days to report a similar orange-coloured shaped object in the area at the same time. Another sighting was also reported 2 months prior on the 16th of March, when a family claimed to have witnessed a luminous elliptical object over the Morro de Boa Viagem, another hill in Niterói. And that's not all, as it turned out that not only were Manuel and Miguel not the first to be involved in a high-profile UFO sighting in the area, but they weren't even the first lead mask case. In volume 13 of the British magazine Flying Saucer Review, it's reported that 4 years prior, Another TV technician named Hermes Luis Feitosa had been found deceased on the Morro de Cruzeiro near Neves, with a similarly shaped lead mask lying beside him. Once again, this man mysteriously had no apparent cause of death, no injuries, and no toxicology report, with suggestions at the time that he had gone to experiment with alleged psychic abilities that would have allowed him to pick up radio and television signals through only the power of his mind. By now, the story had escaped the confines of Niterói and spread across Brazil. UFO enthusiasts flocked to the hills, convinced that this was proof of contact. But for investigators, excitement was quickly turning into chaos. With no leads and no solid evidence, police could do little more than wait, hoping someone, somewhere, would come forward with the truth. One man, named Hamilton Bazzani, who was imprisoned for car theft, initially came forward and confessed to killing Manuel and Miguel, and that he had been hired by an unnamed group to perform the hit. He claimed that he and 3 others took them up to the hilltop, forced them to swallow a poisonous capsule at gunpoint, and stole a majority of the remaining money that they had on their person. With Bazzani behind bars at the time of their death, police dismissed his story, yet couldn't understand initially why he would try to implicate himself in a murder that he didn't commit. However, they later discovered that Bazzani had already managed to escape from 2 jails previously, and it's believed that he concocted the story so that he would be transferred back to a prison in Niterói, which was notoriously easy to escape from. Other theories, such as a group of spiritists claiming that the pair died due to a failed abduction, along with a medical doctor who claimed the men had manifested a paranormal entity for a seance, were also quickly dismissed. A friend came forward with a supposed testimony, claiming that the 2 were attempting to contact aliens using psychedelic drugs, instructed by the movement of scientific spiritism. It's alleged that they were expecting to encounter a blinding light upon making first contact, with the masks necessary to shield them from the harsh rays. However, after ingesting the narcotics, the 2 would die of a simultaneous drug overdose, collapsing side by side, and creating a UFO mystery that would be forever embedded into South American folklore. Whilst this theory makes sense on the surface, as with every enigma, it leaves a lot of questions unanswered. Firstly, hallucinogenic drugs are rarely linked to overdose-related deaths, and are almost always combined with an external factor, such as falling whilst intoxicated. Yet with no injuries found on their person, this does not satisfy the theory. They may have ingested other substances which could potentially be more lethal, yet with no conclusive toxicology reports, we may never know what concoction they inevitably consumed. Another hole in this theory lies with the missing money, with a majority of the 3 million cruzeiros missing from their persons, yet there are a number of potential explanations for this. It could be that they spent the money elsewhere along their journey, or it may be that the money was stolen from them after their discovery on the mountain, either by Jorge looking for his kites, or perhaps another passerby who chose not to report the findings. The most likely theory is that they never had that amount of money on them to begin with, due to a statement made by Miguel's cousin. When asked about the purpose of the journey, Miguel is claimed to have said, "Buying a car isn't the real purpose of the trip. When I get back, I'll tell you whether or not I believe in spiritualism." "14 years after the strange deaths of Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana, Jacques Vallee, a French computer scientist turned ufologist, flew to Rio de Janeiro and made his way up the Morro de Vintém to investigate the story that had plagued the minds of so many in the region. Upon reaching the spot that the pair were found, he noticed a strange occurrence that was different from the rest of the surroundings. As we reviewed these details at the scene of the tragedy, I noticed that no vegetation was growing at the place where the bodies had been found. So many oddities about this case continue to stir the imagination, with scattered fragments of evidence that blur the line between reality and science fiction. The unusual deaths of multiple men clad in lead masks, their alleged attempts to communicate with beings from another planet, eyewitness reports of glowing craft gliding silently above mountaintops, and years later, an inexplicable disturbance in the landscape of the scene. All these anomalies weave together a story that refuses to rest. Were Miguel and Manuel victims of a cult reaching for the stars, or witnesses to something beyond human comprehension? Like so many tales of UFO encounters throughout history, the legacy of this mystery lingers in the half-light, suspended between skepticism and belief, fact and folklore. And perhaps that's where it will stay. A riddle etched into time, inviting each new generation to look up at the night sky and wonder what really happened on that fateful day.